Welcome to Politics Done Right on KPFT. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Give me a call at 713-526-5738. That is 713-526-KPFT. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Williams, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. Welcome aboard, and welcome aboard to my good new friend. And Terrell, how you doing today?
Oh, yo, I'm great. How you doing?
Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did. Perfect, man. You nailed it.
I nailed it. Well, anyhow, welcome aboard the
Appreciate
Politics Done Right machine, and we are going to have a good time. We're going to have some great calls. We're going to talk some important stuff, man. All right?
Let's get it in.
So beforehand, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, because I don't think you ever had the Politics Done Right audience yet. So tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I'm Q. I do a podcast called Bootleg Like Jazz. It's a multicultural conversation about diversity in travel, art, society, culture, perspective. And on the side, I do some other things. But, yeah, also volunteer on Nuestra Palabra Tuesdays from 6 to 7, so tune in as well. So, yeah, just, trying to get my own self off the ground, but also supporting those around me as well.
Well, thank you so kindly for being here, my friend. We're going to have a good show, folks, so get ready. Look, it's these days things are very serious, and just like I've constantly said, we're going to have a very serious show. So we are going to have a serious show today. Today, the show's title is, and let me get to it, because if I want to tell you what the show's title is, I got to get it on a podcast, which needs to be recharged. And, right now I have it charging, but, we are ready to go. So here it is, folks. The title of the show today is as follows. Why is the Democratic Party lagging? And hear me out again. Why is the Democratic Party lagging? Not lagging. I don't want to say lagging for the sake of lagging. What I really am saying is lagging behind the people. Lagging behind what folks want. Lagging behind. Before my great Democratic brothers and sisters get on my case, this is a positive message that we're going to be talking about. There's nothing negative about what we're going to be talking about today, folks. So, are you ready to get busy? Let's get busy as soon as I go ahead and tone down some of these particular programs on the internet here. Okay, let's get busy, and here we go. Title of the show: Why is the Democratic Party lagging behind most of Americans' wants? Subtitle of the show today is what? The Democratic Party is allowing the fear of a word to hinder doing what's right. Why fear being called a democratic socialist if it supports the policies of Americans' wants? Don't undermine, inform Americans. They are smart. Americans are smart. Anyhow, folks, here we go. Are you tired of having to chase a mythical center? Are you tired of lying to Americans because the right has programmed many to fear their shadow, but most importantly, maligned words? That instilled fear serves a purpose. It keeps Americans in a constant state of fear of just about everything they think they are not used to thus allowing the plutocracy, to the oligarchy, the few, to continue their pilfer. So, if you're in a constant state of fear, you can't perform. Constant state of fear, you can't perform. Anyhow, folks, that instilled fear is something we have to work on. You may have noticed over the past few weeks, I've been talking a lot about democratic socialism. Why? Is it that I think Oh, there's a big socialist thing going. No, 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 no. The Republicans have told you, all of you that are Democrats, that are progressives, that you are those great, big, bad socialist. Okay? That's what they were saying. Do you think by running to the center, do you think by denying things, they're going to change their mantra to whatever they're talking about? No, they're not. So let's continue, brothers and sisters. Why? I am on an informing crusade. The Democratic Party must realize that there is nothing they can do to prevent the right from stamping them with the socialist label. It is a battle they cannot win on the defensive. Democrats must lean in and talk about what they stand for without hesitation, and they must lean in. We have the time to transition thinking between now and the primaries and the general election. Now is the ideal time because the cancer of an extracting market is in full vogue. The damage is at a peak level, and it is at this level that we must act. You see, it is now that the incrementalists will make adjustments to give a semblance of change, and many will fall for the trap because they may believe incrementalism is more comfortable or more attainable. We must break that mental slavery. La esclavitud mental. We've got to break it. Before I get to the program, I want to remind all our listeners that KPFT is a bastion of intelligent voices and programs. As a political activist myself, my favorites are, I don't know if they told you that we have this kind of a sing-along, Terrell. You don't, they haven't told you about that yet, right?
No, not yet.
Okay, well, we'll do that the next time. Anyway, it goes like this, folks. As a political activist, my friends, my favorites are Think Wing Radio with Mike Honig on Mondays at 3 p.m. Open Journal with Dwayne Bradley and crew, Mondays at 6 p.m. Jazz Latino, Afro-Cuban Latin Jazz at its very best, hosted by Juan Flores on Tuesdays. And, of course, that is at noon till 2. And, of course, right after my show, there is the one and only Jenner Asian Radio, a weekly radio featuring an weekly program featuring an eclectic mix of Asian underground, Bhangra, Bollywood, funk, Hindi, Ray, where ancient sounds meet future beats. Tuesdays 4 to 6 p.m., like I said, right after this show, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, do you ever listen to that show, man?
I do check them out when I can.
Are they bad or what?
I'm working, but yeah.
They're bad. Check it out right after this, guys. Then, of course, there's Really But Not Really, a hip-hop and R&B parody show on Wednesdays at 10 p.m. And you know who Rosemont is? That's who does that show. And there's Border Radio, Best of Americana Music featuring Susan Darrow. That's on Thursdays at 4 p.m. And Black on Both Sides, a public affairs program with the effort to highlight politics and public affairs in line with our individual and collective worldview. That's Wednesdays on HD2 between 12 and 2. And of course, Terrell, what's your program?
Bootleg Like Jazz. You can find it on SoundCloud. You can find it on WordPress.com.
All right, no problem, my friend. Anyhow, folks, check out our full schedule at kpft.org, where you can find programming from music to politics to medicine to the eclectic. KPFT is a listener-supported public community radio station, so please remember, if you like what you hear, visit kpft.org and ensure we remain a strong, valuable community radio station and provides news, programming, and information not influenced by the corporatocracy. Folks, do remember kpft.org. What are your thoughts? After the blog of the week, I want to hear from you. This is a serious blog. Well, all of my blogs are serious, but this one I want you to listen, because it is important and it carries that concept that we are going to have to fight through. A lot of our Democrats are fighting among each other. Don't you dare use that word, Democratic Socialism. You know why? Because they're going to brand us with it. Folks, they've been branding Democrats as socialists from the time the time I came to the United States of America. Okay? So you got to get off of the fear. You have to fight. You have to go in. You have to lean in. You don't let them define you. You define what you are, and you define what you're going to do for the American people. So, folks, do you know what time it is?
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay, we got it going. We had a little temporary el misfuncionario del micrófono, pero eso no importa. We gonna get it. Here we go. The title of the blog of the week is the Democratic Party socialist? No! Thou, coming from me, it probably should be because of what I'm going to tell you right now. So check it out. It is important to note that most presidential candidates, Democratic leaders, and rank and file Democratic Party members will categorically deny being Democratic Socialists. They believe it is toxic to say so, even if they believe in most of its policies as well as do most of the American people. You know what they'll say? This morning, I read a Common Dreams article by Jeffrey C. Isaac titled, Kamala Harris is not a red baiter. She just not a socialist like most Americans. That is worth reading. It's an important article by Mr. Jeffrey C. Isaac at Common Dreams. At first, I was not sure what like most Americans meant. Remember, his title was Kamala Harris is not a red baiter. She's just not a socialist like most Americans. So at first I was trying to think, what was he trying to say? Was he trying to say, oh, no, most Americans are socialists? At first I was not sure, since it implied most Americans are socialists. On reading the article, it is clear the author believes they are not. There is much, this is what he says, quote, there is much legitimate excitement about the revival of the left, and I strongly believe in supporting this energy and excitement. As I said only last week in praise, new blood brings new energy to the Democratic Party. But I've also seen and experienced too much in my 6 decades to fully share in this enthusiasm. And I am painfully cognizant of the fact that while there is much discontent and while the left has made headway in some important quarters, American society in 2019 is not fertile ground for democratic socialism. More importantly, the American state is being governed, or rather malgoverned, by an aspirational fascist who, while has no majority, does have a very strongly mobilized base and has more power to create emergencies and is doing his best to wage a campaign of vicious red baiting. In short, there are no guarantees that Trump will be defeated in 2020. He might well win, though some combination of an orchestrated crisis, a highly mobilized, i.e. his mob, and acrimonious divisions among his opponents. And while the left has gotten many headlines, many due to the charisma of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who I have repeatedly celebrated and has advanced important proposals like Medicare for All and the Green New Deal, this does not mean that the left is a hegemonic force. While fine high-profile left candidates like AOC and Rashida Tlaib won in November, most of the blue wave involves centrist victories. That is a fact. Wait a minute though, my friend. I'm still within the quote, but I want to tell him that it is true that most of the victories were won by centrists, but they were hosted or they were buoyed over the fence by the progressive wave. Let's get the things straight. While the Democratic Party now includes socialists and must respect these socialists, it is not yet and is not likely to ever be a socialist party. This means that it has many currents and leaders who are not socialists and who do not believe in socialism. These currents and leaders need to be recognized for what they are. And leftists and socialists who are now working inside the Democratic Party and supporting leftist Democratic leaders like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez need to understand that they need to argue with and sometimes challenge these other leaders, but also must work with them, and in all probability work in a context in which it is these leaders and not the leftists who will have the upper hand. This is simply how the balance of forces leans in the Democratic Party, and until the U.S. adopts a different form of representation and becomes a multi-party system, the Democratic Party is where the action is on the left when it comes to national politics. Closed quote. Now, I agree that the pseudo-chaos brewing in the Democratic Party between those who admit they are democratic socialists and those who profess their devotion to capitalism, as they categorically say that they are not socialists, could re-elect Donald Trump. That fight could elect Donald Trump. The problem is that it is a false argument based on labels. Progressives have lazily and timidly allowed the right to malign for years. If progressives are unable to institute labeling honesty in 2019, a year when all the evils of capitalism are at the forefront, then we should all take our marbles and go home. It is the timidity and fear for an outright battle between the very few leaders of an oppressive system with its indoctrinated cohorts that are the problem. While the Democratic Party, this quote, open quote now for the author again, while the Democratic Party now includes socialists and must respect these socialists, it is not yet and it is not ever going to be that type of a party. Close quote. Now, I have said for some time that progressives need to work within the Democratic Party from the precinct chair level all the way up. While it is not yet a labeled Democratic Socialist Party, by definition, the wants of most Democrats and the majority of Americans follow its tenets. It is the maligning of the word that institute fears, and it is the responsibility of brave progressives to lean into what most Americans want. The double-edged sword that progressives are fearful of is to give the needed robust critique of the corrosive nature of capitalism. Just for amusement, I looked up a definition of socialism, communism, and capitalism. Of course, it tried to make communism and socialism similar. They are not. But what grabbed my eyes was the following from Investopedia. And listen to what it says. Both are the opposite of capitalism, meaning socialism and communism. You know, if you say both are the opposite, it assumes that both are the same. It's funny, but here we go. Both are the opposite of capitalism, where limitations don't exist and reward comes to those who go beyond the minimum. In capitalist societies, owners are allowed to keep the excess production they earn, and competition occurs naturally, which fosters advancement. Capitalism tends to create a sharp divide between the wealthiest citizens and the poorest. However, with the wealthiest owning the majority of the nation's resources. That's how they define capitalism. Now, listen to that definition. How difficult is it to turn owners are allowed to keep the excess production they earn into the phrases stealing from or the pilfer of the worker, especially since it is enriching from the intellect and labor of others who then live in financial stress? This is not rocket science, people. It's not rocket science at all, people. This is not rocket science at all. It is not rocket science. And for some reason, I forgot to get rid of my loud phone, which I am not supposed to do. But anyhow, let me continue. It is not rocket science for us to look at that definition. And whenever they attack the values that Democrats, progressives have, to come back and say, but your values is to say, I am dependent on something else. It is not at all hard to say that, folks. It's not at all hard to say that. So let's get with the program and start being tough in the way we handle things. Okay, continue. Continuing what he has to say. As I have argued many times, and as I will continue to argue, the activism and voter mobilization and policy positions of self-identified socialists like Sanders and AOC are a breath of fresh air in the Democratic Party. The party needs to take these leaders and their constituencies and voters and ideas very seriously. They ought to be given a fair chance to win out in the primaries, in the platform debates, and in politics more generally. But this does not mean that those Democrats who are most centrist or moderate or even left but not left enough for some are doing something underhanded or wrong by standing or what they stand for. They're not wrong. I mean, if you're a centrist, you're a centrist. If you're moderate, you're moderate. You're not necessarily right or wrong. That's just who you are. Those left, and this is still Jeffrey Isaac's words, those left activists who have done so much to support leaders like Sanders and AOC and it support local organizations' efforts to promote left issues and policies have every reason to expect the Democratic Party to take them seriously and to refuse and denounce all right-wing efforts to red bait left Democratic candidates. I mean, they have all the rights to do such a thing. Oh my God, there's just this thing bothering me right now. Anyhow, but they have no reason to expect the many Democratic leaders and voters who are not on the left to agree with them. The debate within the Democratic Party has shifted to the left, and this is good. But it is still a debate within the Democratic Party, which is not a seminar or a town meeting, but an organization with real institutional investments and mobilization of bias. And as the election approaches, it is a debate that will center on two linked questions: which candidate and which platform can mobilize core Democratic constituencies, and which candidate and platform can win the 2020 election, closed quote. Mr. Isaac is right on most accounts. Where I disagree is that I believe that Americans are disassociating their wants and desires from a label because of the corrosive fear that the right has successfully marketed with the help of the Powell Manifesto as well. And if you want to know about the Powell Manifesto, go to egbertowillis.com and just search for Powell Manifesto, which by influence makes the policies they want rhetorically toxic. If one thinks that the Democratic Socialism label is toxic and Medicare for all is a democratic socialist ideal, that in itself becomes toxic. It is that psychology that requires honesty in labeling and why we must fight to get it. And that is close quote. Folks, the telephone number is 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. And it seems like we already have one call and all lines are open. Give me a call. Line numero tres. Come on in, Scott.
Thank you. I have a buddy on Facebook who said that Social Security is a scam. And I said, I get very real deposits every month into my bank account. And he said, well, I could get better returns on index funds.
He's crazy. First of all, there's a very big misconception people have about Social Security. They think that Social Security, the money goes into some storage fund, and somehow later on you're going to get it back with interest. And, they don't understand how it works. A lot of people don't put in the amount of money in Social Security that they take out. They take out a whole lot more money, even at a 7% interest rate, if that's what, the market average. You did, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't understand that, Scott. But you know what? A lot of that is our fault, right? Because we allow the right to get away with making silly statements, right? And it's not the fault of the average Republican citizen or the fault of the average Republican person. It is the fault of the leaders on the left side who don't hold hands, who don't go to the level of the people to really go ahead and try to teach them. So they allow these people's minds to be polluted over the decades. And then those of us who come afterwards and we try to have a dialogue and talk to folks on the right, and it doesn't, and they don't listen to us immediately, or they don't listen to our facts immediately, don't understand that they've been programmed for so long that deprogramming does not occur with one conversation, with two conversations, with 10 conversations. It takes a long time. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I asked this guy, are there enough index funds for everybody? And I didn't get an answer. But it seems he does pretty well with investings. I don't know how much money he has. I sort of doubt he's one of the top 1%, but he seems to be benefiting from plutocracy.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have some criticisms of Social Security.
Okay.
First of all, it's regressive tax. Also...
Hold on a quick second now. Folks, we still have a whole lot of empty lines open, 713-526-5738. I'd love to hear from you, especially if you have some comments on the blog of the week that I had. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, here's criticism. My father was self-employed whenever he could be, and one of his big grievances was he had to pay double on Social Security, both as an employer and as an employee.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know whether that's still true or not, but
that is not quite
does not sound good.
That is not quite accurate. Let me tell you what happens, because I'm a sole proprietor. And what happens is the following. If you are a sole proprietor, okay, you are responsible for your entire Social Security bill. So since I employed myself, while everybody else's Social Security is about 7.25 or something percent, and in other words, the person pays 7.25% and the employer pays 7.25%. In my case, I had to pay 15% because that includes the Medicare taxes as well. So that's what really happens. It's that the employer is responsible for a certain percentage of your Social Security tax, and you are responsible for the other percentage.
And when I was an employee, which I always was, I was paying less than you would be.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Still sounds unfair. But then I wonder whether Social Security and Medicare could be less tied to jobs, you know, not based on payroll, but on income, general revenue.
Well, I mean, the way I feel, right, is that is exactly how I would do things, right? Whenever we do things, we collect. All of us work hard. Whenever you have a family, you work. But then the government isn't the family. But what I would like to see is that we all put the monies in the general fund. We see what society wants to pay for, and then all of that comes out of general funds. I think having accounting like Social Security and Veterans Administration and Medicare and all that kind of stuff coming out of all these different funds and taxed differently, I don't think it's the best way things are done. I think you have a whole pool of money and then you determine what to do with that pool of money. That would be my preference. And then whenever you need to increase the pool of money, you increase taxes. Whenever you need to decrease it, that's how I think it should work. But hey, I'm just one person.
You know, back in 1961, I was a Republican, and I took a course on ethics from John Silver. You've probably heard of him.
Yes, I have.
Later, he was president of Boston University, and he acquired a conservative reputation in later years, but he was considered a flaming liberal when I took him, and we were in Austin.
Right.
Well, one of his graduate assistants one day spoke of Social Security as a basic right.
Right.
Well, I didn't really like the argument. I preferred a more pragmatic argument. I had been reading an article by Peter F.
I'm coming to you next, Tori, and then Carl. Go ahead.
Peter F. Drucker, he was an advisor to Eisenhower, and he said that New Deal programs like Social Security stabilize the economy.
They do.
Yes, there was a disaster one afternoon in October of 1929, which should have convinced everybody that the economy cannot just run itself.
Right.
So I got a little input that influenced me away from
absolutism.
Being a purely Goldwater Republican.
Got you. Got to go. I got to go to the other call, but thank you so kindly for calling in, Scott. You have a good one. Okay. Take care, buddy. All right, let's go to Tori. Come on in, Tori.
Hey, Egberto.
Talk to me.
Thanks for bringing the sunshine.
Yes, sir.
In more than one way.
Thank you, sir.
And so, it's like the Eskimos have 40 words for snow, and we just call it snow because there's like so many different kinds of snow.
Right.
And, you talked everybody has their different idea of what capitalism and communism and socialism is, to where it's useless
Right.
to use these words to communicate with people.
Right.
And I've mentioned it to you before. I talk about public versus private ownership.
Right.
But even if you go back to Karl Marx, and I like Marx, I am not a communist, but even under Marx, the communists don't like to talk about this, but, you skip to the end of the book, and it's like everything is private enterprise.
Right.
But it's like collectives of workers, democratically
Exactly.
owned workers running the means of production.
Right.
And so, but we have to have a dictator, the proletariat first, and then, the state has to own everything and do all the production, and then you're eating government food and wearing government clothes and driving government cars. That ain't going to happen here.
No.
I already tried it in a couple places, and nobody likes it.
No.
We want private production. It needs to be in the public interest, though.
Absolutely.
And, but so we talk about socializing things as opposed to we need to destroy capitalism. You're not going to get very far like that. And my communist friends just don't seem to understand this. But we just need to bite off the pieces we can reach right now, which, to make socialism, we don't have to talk about socialism, but we need natural resources owned publicly. We need infrastructure owned publicly. We can start there and, take back our electrical grids from the private companies and our cable TV grids. And, they want to privatize water. They want to privatize everything.
They've started
That's
it in
pure
Texas,
capitalism.
yes.
But we can't let them, and we can start small. We don't have to call it socialism. We just need public ownership of basic stuff that we share.
And that's what I was trying to say, and I don't know if I got across it completely in the blog, was forget about forget about running out there and saying no. When Kamala Harris went out there and said, "Oh no, I'm a capitalist," or when even Elizabeth Warren says, no, I'm a capitalist. You don't have to say that. You can just go out there and say, I want what's good for people, and I'm going to do that. And if you want to call that socialist, be my guest. The thing about it, I think, is they have allowed Democrats have cowered from the word, and in cowering from the word, they have allowed the policies as well to move into the right, move the policies to the right. Look, it doesn't matter what a Democrat does, they're going to be called a socialist. Mm-hmm. So when I talk about leaning in, I mean lean into the tenets that we support because it's what the people want.
Bernie doesn't ever use the word socialist. He talks about, he's very, very disciplined. No matter what question they ask him, he turns back to, we need $15 an hour.
Right.
We need, that's his, his whole laundry list of things.
Exactly.
We need healthcare and education. He doesn't say we need nationalized healthcare or socialized healthcare.
Right.
We just need healthcare.
But let me tell you one thing, Tori, that I am doing when I'm talking about socialism, though, is that the reason I am using the word as a host, and the reason I'm trying to take out the fear of it as a host, is for those people who are, like I said, the Republicans are constantly going to just say socialist, 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 right?
Right.
So if you have somebody like me defining that, well, the type of socialism we're talking about doing X, Y, Z, whatever, then that other that reduces the fear that folks are going to have when they say Democrats are socialists. I left a message for a friend on Facebook who destroyed Democrats as being socialists. And my question to her is, I said, you know me, don't you? You know what I stand for, don't you? You know the policies that I stand for. Do you think I'm an evil person? And putting it in that context, folks can say, oh, my God, that's not what they mean. They don't mean what they see happening in Cuba. They don't mean what's happening in all these other places. They mean what we're talking about is, in fact, when I'm talking, I wrote a blog that says, Democrats have these 5 things on your lips, and none of it said socialism. All of it said what you need to survive. None of it said socialism. But if somebody wants to put the tenet socialist on it, as opposed to capitalist on it, I'm not going to sit down and fight with them or argue with them, because I'm not going to sit down and argue or fight the labels.
Well, we need to reclaim or repair the word. It needs to be socially acceptable.
Exactly.
But then again, just to be precise, I mean, nobody, even the people on the left that love socialism, they don't agree on what socialism is.
And not only
that, it becomes difficult to use words when they mean 10 different things to 10 different people.
Exactly. And that is where I think we got to go. Tori,
Okay.
thank you so kindly for calling in, my
You
friend.
bet. Cheers.
You have a good one. Cheers.
Yeah, bye.
Okay, folks, we still have open lines 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. I'm going to Carl, then Julie. Come on in, Carl.
Hello.
How you doing, my brother? Come on in.
The radio's not too loud, I hope.
No, I don't hear the radio right now.
Great. Okay, I want to appreciate your program again. I'm not a first-time caller, and I'm going to start, and I hope you give me enough time to finish through my thoughts.
Just try to be concise, my dear brother.
Thank you, I will. Now, I've just been taking care of my mother and my aged stepfather who's going through some Alzheimer's,
Mm-hmm.
and my girlfriend who's also going through some health problems. And they've all been in the hospital, and I've been taking care of all of them.
Okay.
And now, my stepfather is a retired fireman,
Mm-hmm.
and my mother and him both live basically off of their retirement from the fire department.
Okay.
Now, that can be considered socialism, whatever.
Right.
And the post office and the public parks and all these other beautiful institutions that this country has built that make it the country that it is.
Excellent. Now, kind of get to your point, my brother, just because I have a couple other callers.
Well, the point is, there's nothing wrong with what is. First of all, break the word down. Social means people.
Right.
You're going to pack them in the way that they do, and that's the way that they want to do it in more cities and more cities. Well, yes, this is a social experiment. I mean, people sit together as cities and everything. So, yeah, there's nothing wrong with the word social, and I don't know what the ism is. That's something the Republicans are throwing on it. I don't know. But this country is all about the big fish eating the little fish. And that's why we bring 1 million people into this country every year legally. And it's the one percenters, and I mean, we got to change it.
Now,
that's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you so kindly for calling in, my friend. And Carl, you're right. And what I'm going to say is, we have to start taking care of people, and I don't care what they call taking care of people, but I'm talking about giving all people, not equal outcomes, but equal access to success so that they can go out there and be productive. Thank you so kindly for calling, sir.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Julie. Julie, line 3. And folks, we have open lines, 713-526-5738. Wide open lines, 713-526-5738. Julie, come on in.
Hi, Egberto.
How are you doing, my friend?
How are you doing?
Great.
I was ringing because I found this topic very interesting because ultimately the fact of change begins with changing the indoctrination in higher education.
Absolutely.
And the fact we know is that after the black market crash, corporate America decided that they would no longer allow unions, the people who voted were for these changes and regulations for corporations were socialist, communist, because we did have socialism and communist people in the party as representatives during that period. And they resented the fact that the unions had so much power. So the indoctrination at a higher level is to pro-capitalism and anti-socialism. And as long as the corporations are funding these schools to continue this indoctrination and funding lobbyists in order to support their ideology, the change will be pretty much limited. This is where it needs to begin. It needs to begin in the schools.
I agree 100%, and I think in a lot of ways it is happening. There's a professor that, actually it's a teacher, a high school teacher that called me, I think a few shows ago, and he said, you would not believe it. First of all, the sting that the word social used to have, it's not there anymore for the younger folks. I hang mostly now with a whole lot of millennials. And that is the fact as well. And, what they've noticed is that we've had such an extractive system for so long now that pretty much they've been extracted out. So, I mean, people see that. Now, the caller before, not Carl, but the one before that had to say, I don't remember his name, getting old. But anyhow, what he had to say made a whole lot of sense, Since folks are indoctrinated,
Exactly.
what we do is we talk about the things that they want. We give them the things that they want. We preach, should be at the tip of our tongues. And by the time they all have it and realize that the people are happiest in Denmark, then they'll say, oh, I guess it's okay. Because one of the things about it is America is one of the countries with the lowest mobility rate, upward mobility rate. And, we think we're so much better than Europe or whatever. The average European middle class is more wealthy in the aggregate than we are when you extrapolate for the amount of hours we have to be working, the amount of things we have to do to take care of home, the amount of time that we don't have. I mean, America is a stressed place.
What is interesting, I remember I was telling you we went to Vietnam.
Right.
And I was really fascinated because, this is a communist country.
Right.
But I noticed that people had more freedom in that country than we have in this country in terms of work-life balance, in terms of transportation, in terms of opportunities, and it's growing. It's growing at a rapid rate in Vietnam. I found it really fascinating to see how the youth have really, and what is it, 30 years since the Vietnam War?
Right, since Vietnam War, yeah, the close of the Vietnam War, yeah.
The rapid change of growth in those countries, and I'm thinking, okay, yes, we have gone through our own tragedies in this country, but ultimately we keep shooting ourselves in the foot by looking at, by allowing a certain percentage of the population to control what our desires are.
Well,
it's all ultimately based on greed.
And the thing about it, Julie, is, I always tell people, you remember in the slavery days, right? Mm-hmm. Even in the South, in a lot of areas there were more slaves than there were masters, and at all the time, right? But somehow, even in South Africa during apartheid, I've always wondered how a small amount of people could control such a large amount of mass. And there are two things, right? One is mental enslavement. In other words, if you're enslaved in the mind, I don't need to put you in chains, right? I don't even have to worry about you running away because you're a slave. I got your mind. This is the way things work. But there's another very important portion to it. Your best slave master is a slave that you put a cut above. In other words,
that's right.
All right, you get that slave a cut above, and you can keep a large percentage of the other people enslaved. And this doesn't have anything to do with race, because right now I'm going to explain one other thing to all my great listeners out there. There's this thing called the corporate slave, right? And the corporate slave are those people, and by the way, I want to be very respectful to all my brothers and sisters that are in the corporations and doing very well. All of us, many of us could be there, but some of us took a different path. But this is an important statement that I have to get out, because we need your help to keep a movement that is pretty much going to create a more egalitarian society. And it goes like this. If I can keep a very few, if I can keep the chosen, and I explain to people that, and I'm coming to you, Teresa, I'm coming to you, John, I'm coming to you, MOD. But I want to get this out, and this is a very important concept. I had a software company, right? I did very well with my software company. I had price and power. I gave a speech on price and power a few days ago. I'd like people to go listen to. I had price and power. There are some of the licenses I sold, very high price, and I thought for a long time, I could, I was a master of the world and all of that sort of stuff, till I had to look into my heart and then say, wait a minute, by me charging so much for what I have, the products that I solely make, it meant down the road, all those companies that buy my product had an increased price for all the people that did not have pricing power. So in effect, I was also an oppressor. I was an oppressor because of my pricing power on what I sold. So I got out of it. Now, here's the thing that I mean now with the corporate person. If I can keep enough executives well paid, and you think about it, you think about how many executives are in corporate America that don't do much, but they make $500,000. They make so much for doing very little, while the guys who are in the fields, the guys who are doing very much, they make so little, or they don't get the value consummate to the work they do. And then you ask yourself this question: why is it that can occur and stay that way? Because, the masses out there see that middle level person that is making that $500,000, that $250,000, and they say, I don't want to defeat the system because I just maybe would become the chosen. But
that's right.
You are likely never
I
going
want
to
to leave
be
you
the
with
chosen.
this question, Egberto.
Yes.
Do you think religion is socialism? I'm going to hang up on that question.
Yes, go ahead, Julie.
All right, cheers.
Thank you.
Take care, my friend. Bye.
The answer is religion is definitely socialist. Religion is definitely socialist. In fact, Jesus Christ was a socialist. And we can go into that later, but let me go to Teresa, and then I'll go the other way around. Come on in, Teresa.
Hi. Hey, I just wanted to make a point, and
Yes.
I'm really enjoying your discussion. I'm very much in favor of certain enterprises being publicly owned and managed for the public good.
Right.
Healthcare is a good example. Public education is one that we make our best attempt to do right now, and there are others, utilities, several people mentioned. But if that's done, and it's done for the public good, I think we have to be really cautious of the fact that we've done crony capitalism for so long.
Oh,
because
yes.
Take, for example, the Permanent University Fund in Texas has, $23 billion endowment?
Right. Yes.
It comes from oil revenues and other profits from the use of public land in the state of Texas.
Right.
And then there's the Public School Fund, which there was an article in Sunday's paper, I think it's got around $90 billion. It's a lot of money. And what's happened to the payout for the cause for which it was established is it's been reduced year over year when it's adjusted for inflation, and now I think they're paying a measly maybe $100 and something to $200 a year per student from the Permanent School Fund. It's at an all-time high. It's making a lot of money, but what has increased is the payout to the money managers.
I read that, yes.
And you know who's managing, one of the people that manages the Permanent University Fund is no other than George P. Bush.
Exactly.
So, he's elected statewide. So if we're going to have, meaningful socialism for the public good, then the voters are going to have to wake up, and we'll have to have a more than, what do we have, a 10% turnout when we do a state constitutional amendment, 30, maybe 25 for primaries. They've got to pay attention to who's running it and what they're doing. And who's benefiting.
Teresa,
so that's all I have to say.
Yeah, you have made the most prescient statement thus far.
Thank you.
We have to have an educated populace, and also,
absolutely.
And it's not only that, Teresa. The other thing is this, and you said it clearly, right? I look at we have a whole bunch of corporations, and we also have government. And guess what is the constant between all of those? They're all run by people. Right?
I think it's foolish to say socialism is good, capitalism is bad, or capitalism is good, social. It's the people who are doing it, and whether they're capitalists or managing a socialist system, they've got to have watchdogs, and the people are the ultimate watchdogs.
Exactly. I want to add one thing to you, and I'd like to, and it goes as follows. The reason I think we have to be bifurcated, however, is as follows. You mentioned a very important thing about public lands and oil, et cetera, right? There is no reason that we should have the public lands and the monies out of the public lands, a few people who own shares profit after they've had a return on their investment excessively, because that is, that was ordained by whatever you want to call God or whatever you want to call it. That should belong to all of us.
resources,
all
natural
those
resources.
should belong to all of us. So I mean,
going back to the Native American view that nobody can own Mother Earth.
Thank you. I didn't quite want to put that out yet
What
because
concept?
that would create a huge discussion, but we'll do that another time. Look,
what fun.
Teresa, look, thank you very much for that call, present statement, and I hope folks heard exactly what you said with the tenant that you said it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You have a wonderful day. Okay, let's go to MOD. MOD, come on in, brother.
Hello?
Yes, sir. MOD, you're on.
Yeah.
MOD, you're breaking up. I'm going to put you on hold and come back to you, MOD. All right, John, come on in.
Hey, Berto.
Talk to me, my friend.
3 points I want to make out, but also on that first lady that she was talking about, the Vietnam.
Yes, ma'am.
One thing she does not realize that Vietnam, they are opening up to the international corporations. They are investing in the country right now.
Yes, they are. They sure are. Now, I think what she's trying. She said a most important point. We can't just look and say capitalism bad, socialism good. Let me tell you where I stand. If you look at what I wrote in my book, As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, it isn't that I am a free enterpriser. I am not a capitalist. I'm a free enterpriser, meaning everybody is supposed to have the right to go ahead and create their own companies, profit from their own companies. In other words, they're profiting from their labor. What I am completely against is these what I call when you have shareholders that can sit on their butts and do nothing and just collect for the mere fact that they have money, and they say, well, I take risks, and if I take risk with my money, I deserve X amount of dollars. I don't mind people getting some money on the risk they take. In other words, if I put some money in the bank, that bank is going to loan it out, and the interest I get is a risk that they take as well. So I don't have a problem with some risk at all. What I have a problem is if those people that don't work for their money, in other words, those of us who have monies that can work for them, you know that phrase, money working for you, that money should not be taxed at a lesser rate than those people who are working with their minds, their intellects, and their hands money. It should be, it should be a higher tax rate. And I could go over and over and other things. And then there are other things, like another caller called and said there are things that we all depend on shouldn't be profit-based because it is something that belongs in the commons, something that we should all benefit from. Go ahead, my friend.
Well, that's what I'm going to make a 3 point. First, you talk about business and stuff like that being publicly owned.
Yes.
Every time I have seen that's being public owned, they eventually become investor owned. Mm-hmm. Then eventually a private family takes it over, which drains the profits, and then they have not habit of putting it back to the industry.
Right.
So I have seen other public owned stuff just go down.
Right. Well, just a common thing in Europe. I read when they started this stuff about privatizing the transportation, the bus systems and whatever, that it was never as good as when it was run by the public. And that is understandable. I mean, it's math, right? I mean, if you have a bus system and you don't want, and assuming that the rates stay the same, if you also now have to get profit out of those rates and shareholder value out of those rates, and the rates cannot increase by X amount of dollars, the only thing that can suffer is service. People are going to say, oh, no, but also efficiency. Well, you know what? There's just so much efficiency you can get, period. There's just so much. Anything else you want to say, John?
Oh, the second thing is that I understand why people get mad at this rich people, because they're like the third, fourth generation rich.
Right.
And, of course, the first generation, they're very creative, inventive.
Right.
But nowadays, for them to keep the money, they're very manipulative. Right. And I can understand why people get mad at some of these capitalists and corporations.
The big problem, the other thing about it is, we need to have a very large, tax, inheritance tax, because again, if you earn something, it is fine. Now when you're gone, it should be recirculated. But that's another topic. I don't want to open a new discussion. I got to go to the other call. So thank you so kindly for calling in, John. Okay.
Thank you, bud.
Have a wonderful day. Okay, let's go to line 1. I don't know who it is, but come on in, line 1.
Is that me?
That's you.
Yeah, when people who
Johnny!
money, inherited wealth, for example, they say, I take all the risk. They didn't take any risk. They didn't earn the money, number one.
Thank you.
And number two, the people who really take risk, who make this world work, for example, the one big sector, municipal employees,
right,
who lay faith in this social contract, that if they remain loyal and faithful and do a competent job, we reward them at the end of their career with a decent retirement. Those are people taking the risk because they are trusting that they're not going to get screwed over like has been happening under Republican rule this past 2.5 decades.
You're absolutely right on that. You know, that is something that I always try to point out. Let's remember who really take the risk. That guy who is building that bridge.
People, they bear the ultimate risk on everything.
Absolutely. The average American citizen.
Good day.
You have a great one, Johnny. Hey, you were quick today, Johnny. Anyhow, folks, yeah, we're getting down to the last minute or so. So let me tell you. First of all, I want to. What do I leave? 57 or 58?
We're at 56.
Okay, we're 56. Okay, great. Folks, let me tell you, thank you so kindly for all those calls that are coming in. Look, the thing of the matter, the thing that we have to take into account right now is as we are campaigning for whatever we're doing, we have to be the ones leading the charge. We have to be the ones going in. We have to be leading in. We cannot allow others to define who we are. We go in there and define what we are going to do for the American people. Now, the American people are not stupid. Being indoctrinated does not mean that you're stupid. I can be indoctrinated. Anyone can be indoctrinated. The idea about it is when we come together as a smart collective, indoctrination ultimately fails or succeeds based on leaders. So what I have to tell you, my friends, lean into what we're going to do for people. We're going to be called socialists no matter what. Lean into the values we stand for. If we do that, 2020 is going to be a great year. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you guys know how I end this show. I am out!
Thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. You can personally reach me by sending an email to egberto@politicsdoneright.com. Remember, Egberto is spelled E-G-B-E-R-T-O. Change starts with you. 90.1 KPFT gives you information not tainted by corporate interest. Please visit kpft.org and contribute. Let's ensure continued access to real information and news remain available to all. Again, thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right.